Hello everyone, Alex Trujillo from FlightScope. Hope everyone's doing well. And this week we want to bring you another webinar to speak a little bit about maximizing your FlightScope X3. Look forward to the interaction with you guys. Want to give you some information. If you have any questions, if you can please ask them in the Ask a Question section down below. I'm by myself today, so I won't be able to monitor the chat line on the right here. So let's get started. Those of you that have an X3, I'm sure you've seen some of its capabilities. For those that maybe don't have an X3 yet and are looking into it, I want to just discuss some of its main points. So we'll start right off. You guys, I'm sure, know this gentleman here. He's had some very good recent success. Current U.S. Open champion. And, you know, Bryson's been using FlightScope since he was about 15 years old. Obviously, our technology has been changing throughout those years. But the X3 for him has been instrumental in helping him identify, you know, what shots he needs to play on the golf course. So you can see his quote here, and we'll talk a little bit about what those advantages are that he receives from the unit. So let's talk about something called multipath. So before the X3 arrived, it's been well known that with radar there is something called multipath, and that's basically signals that bounce or reflect off the ground and basically cause a disturbance in the radar signal. And you've maybe heard the term flying under the radar, like when an aircraft gets really low to the ground. The radar can't necessarily pinpoint. It can see the aircraft, but it can't necessarily pinpoint the exact location of where it is. So we decided to incorporate something into our technology called fusion tracking, which is still using radar, which we're experts in, have been doing for a very long time, but also adding image processing to be able to basically clear out the signal even more. And this is particular in scenarios such as putting and chipping or hitting wedge shots, especially those full wedge shots that you hit off the turf. You have a lot of noise, you have the divot flying, you have tees and grass and dirt. There could be a lot of multipath there. So with the X3 and fusion tracking, we've been able to really clear that up. And for those of you who have the product, I'm sure you've noticed that the capture rate of this system is second to none, and that is through the use of our fusion tracking. And that's basically what you see here, is we've combined 3D radar tracking with image processing. Again, if you have any questions, just feel free to put them down in the Ask a Question section. Actually, I have a question in there right now. Let's take one. So this question is from Skip. It says, how to manage different instructors and different students in the software. Skip, that's a great question. I'm going to go through some of the softwares throughout the webinar today. But for example, if you are using VX app, the easiest way to do that is going to be to create your own account. So each instructor would have their own FlightScope account on myflightscope.com. And then once they go into their application, they can just add their players in the Add a Player section there and maintain basically a list of the players that they're helping. All right, so let's talk a little bit of how we're going to connect our X3 to our different applications. So for those of you, I'm sure everyone here obviously has a cell phone, and you've connected to a Wi-Fi signal at some point. What you'll do is you'll go into your Wi-Fi settings of your device, whether that's your phone or your iPad, and you're going to search for the unit serial number. And that will come up in the Wi-Fi settings as FSX3 dash, and then you'll have a number 01234, for example. So the Wi-Fi password is always going to be the serial number of the unit. So that'll be capital X3 dash, and then the numbers that precede that. Your X3 should also have a QR code on the side of it, which you can use actually within the FS Golf app, which we'll talk about. and actually connect to it through there without having to go into the Wi-Fi settings. So the process is turn on your Wi-Fi, connect to your unit's Wi-Fi, and then you'll be able to launch the application. Here's some of our status indicators of the X3. So you'll have your connection side, which looks as a almost like a triangle, 3 points, and your white light means the connection's off, your blue light means the connection is ready, and then your green light means the connection is connected. Now on the hardware status side, or what we like to call the heartbeat signal, you have a few indicators. The two important ones that you're always going to be looking on is the green and the red. So when you see that the radar is green, that means it's in standby mode. When you see that it's red, that means it's armed and ready to measure. So when you see that green, red, green, red, green, red, and then it'll go to solid red, that means, okay, we're ready to track. Some of the information that the X3 is going to give you, it is over 50 data parameters, but here's some of those data parameters, and this is one of the things that separates the X3 from our other product lines like the Mevo Plus and the Mevo, is the X3 is going to give you everything you need from the teaching, fitting, or even simulation side. So on the club data side, we're going to have our club path, we're going to have our face to path, and we're also going to have our face to target, which I think it's something good to point out, is that we can show you the face angle relative to the club path or relative to the target line. And I think that's important to understand that, especially if you're going to be speaking about the D-plane. We have angle of attack, spin loft, dynamic loft, the horizontal and vertical swing planes, your low point, and then your speed and acceleration profiles, which are a huge factor or key data parameters in our data to help you as a fitter or a teacher. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but if you're a fitter, you should definitely be using these profiles. On the ball flight side, we're going to have your normal parameters like your carry, your total, your smash, but we're also going to give you your curve, lateral landing, your shot dispersion if you're using skills, and also smash factor, ball speeds, etc. On the putting side, there's your putting data that is received through the X3. You also have your chipping data, and all of this data is captured in what we call the FS short game app. So for those of you that are looking to get these data parameters with your X3, you're going to be using the FS short game app. Available softwares. So there is a pretty big list. The radar does have a lot of functionality. We will be in future consolidating a lot of these applications into one. But the two most, or I would say the three most popular ones starting from the top would be the VX app, and then from there we would go into the FS Golf, and then into the FS Skills app. So FSVX, it is an iPad or Android tablet driven application. Cannot be really used on a phone because of its size, but the FSVX app is going to give you all your data parameters as well as those speed and acceleration profiles that you use in teaching and fitting. With the FS Golf app, you're going to have a lot of the same similarities, but this is now on your mobile device. And what's really neat about the FS Golf app is because your mobile device should have cellular data, you're going to get two connections basically. You're going to get the connection from the phone to the radar to establish that connection, and you're also going to get your cellular data. And what that does for you is it allows the application to import local weather information, which can be extremely useful, especially when using an X3. The VX app also has that capability on the iPads, but your iPad does have to have cellular data to be able to import that weather information into the environmental optimizer. We also have the FS Multicam. So the FS Multicam is an extension of the FS Golf app or the FS Video app or the FS Short Game app. And what this does is it allows an additional device to be used as a camera. So for example, let's say I have my FS Video app up and running, and I want to have another video source, maybe my phone. I can go on my phone, open up the Multicam app, and now I'm going to get video, for example, from face on. I'll use my iPad, which is controlling the video app, from down the line, and I'll have two different views. If you're using the X3, you also get the video from within the X3 that also has club and ball trace on it, which is also a feature of our Fusion tracking. We have the FlightScope PC software. This software will be changing in the very near future to a more updated and sleek look. And then obviously we have our third-party simulation softwares, which include E6, True Golf, The Golf Club, Awesome Golf, Creative Golf 3D. We have a whole list. So that's one of the things that I think is unique to us, is we do like to party with third-party companies, and if it makes sense, and give our customers different options. We have a question in the Ask a Question section. This question is from Ron. It says, how many camera inputs can be linked to the FS Multicam app? So you can have two inputs. In a current scenario, you could have, let's say, two multicams going with your iPad. You could disable the X3 camera as well, but you could basically have a total of 3 cameras is what the software allows. So if you go into your video app, for example, you're going to have 1 and 2, camera 1 and 2, and then the third camera would be from the X3. So the 1 and 2 cameras could be from either multicam devices, or it could be one multicam and your iPad or your operating software. So Jen Scott is asking, can software be purchased for putting that could be used for the XI Tour? Mr. Scott, the XI Tour does not have putting capabilities. This is something that's done through Fusion tracking for the short game applications. So there unfortunately is not a software upgrade you could do for the XI Tour for putting. However, we do have some upgrades that you can go from XI Tour to X3 if that's of any interest. We'll continue right along with our slides here. So some information on if you're going to be using, whether you're going to be using a PC or a mobile device. If you are going to be using a PC, these are our recommendations for the specifications of the computer. Microsoft based 64, there's your RAM, 8 gigabytes or more, the amount of disk space that you'll need, and then also your different connections. One thing that will be updated also is the newer X3s have a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection, so your computer will have to either have that capability, or you'll just have to have a 5 gigahertz dongle. The questions on that, our support team can help guide you through that. So if your computer doesn't have 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, it only has 2.4, and you have an X3 and you want to connect to it, all you'd have to do is just get a 5 gigahertz dongle to establish that connection. On the mobile side, we have some requirements as to the iOS or Android versions that you must be running. For iOS, it's going to be iOS 12 or later, and then for Android, it's going to be 6.0 or higher. Specifications on how we can use the X3. So there's 4 different modes. You have your outdoor mode, which is, we're going to be out on the range hitting shots. You want to have a sensor to tee distance of 8 to 12 feet, and then you're going to have unrestricted ball flight. If you're going to be outdoors but still hitting into a net, then you would actually use the long indoor or the indoor mode. Long indoor mode is more of the scenario, if for those of you who have maybe visited the PGA show, there's about, I'd say, 40 to 50 yards of ball flight before the ball hits the net. That is where your long indoor mode would be used, as you can see there, 40 yards minimum. And then your indoor mode would be when you only have 13 feet of ball flight or more. And then you have your short indoor mode, which allows you to have a sensor to tee of 7 to 9 feet and then a ball flight of 8 feet minimum. So the short indoor mode would be really good for your garage setups, or maybe you have some restricted space. You could use the short indoor mode. So there's the 4 modes. One thing to also keep in mind is in any of the indoor modes, one metallic dot is required on the golf ball, and that metallic dot should be facing the net or the target. A few reasons for that. One would be so that you don't have to keep replacing the dots, because if you hit it with your club, you're going to knock them off. And also the radar does see through the dielectric cover of the golf ball, so the dot acts as almost as a magnifying glass for the radar signal. So the dot placement is important. Doesn't mean that the radar is not going to track the shot. It's just the accuracy is reliant on the metallic sticker indoors. We'll continue along here. Some setups for putting, chipping, and outdoor chipping. So if we're going to be putting, and I'll separate putting into 2. If you're going to be putting with the short game application, where you're going to be working on your putting stroke and using that application, the sensor to tee distance is 5 feet, and you have to have a minimum of a 6-foot putt. 6 to 30-foot putt is basically where the range is. If you're going to be putting in simulation like E6 or TGC or any of our simulation partners, then your radar will be set up in that 8-foot sensor to tee, but your putts will actually be from 7 feet. So, questions on the putting, if you guys ever run into any troubles when you're using simulation, just feel free to reach out. But just remember that short game, if you're using the short game app, the sensor to tee will be 5 feet. If you're using anything else with putting, then it will be 7 feet. Indoor chipping, again using the short game app, you're going to have the 5 feet sensor to tee with a minimum of 8 feet of ball flight. And then your outdoor chipping, again you'll have your 5 feet sensor to tee with your 6-foot minimum chip distance and up to 50 yards max. Any questions on there, please let me know. We have a question, no name, but it says, can you specify how to put this metallic dot on the golf ball? Is this something that I buy or draw on the ball? Thank you. So the metallic dot does come. You will get metallic dots with the X3. If you run out, you can just reach out to us and purchase another bundle. But it's simply just one metallic dot placed on the ball, and then you just want to orient that metallic dot towards the net or the target, which would be on your net. We have a question here from Brian Jones. It says, why would my X3 go to sleep after being on and running for 3 to 4 hours while hooked up to electric? So Brian, there is a sleep timeout in our applications. For example, let's say you max out your sleep timeout for 60 minutes, which is the max. That basically means that in a 60-minute period, if the radar doesn't see, after the 60-minute period, if it doesn't see any triggers or it doesn't get armed and triggered, then the radar will go into a sleep mode if it doesn't have any activity in that time span. So if you're plugged in, you do want to max out, you can max out your sleep timeout, but just be aware of that. If you come back to it, you might see that it is in a sleep mode and you just have to wake it. The other thing that can happen is when there is long periods of time throughout the day like this where the radar is on and it's connected to an application, sometimes the applications can time out or get a pause in them, so it's just simply recycling the application, reestablishing the connection with the unit, and then you should be ready to go. We got a question here from Ken, which says, how can I get rid of players and golf bags that I have saved? I coach a college team and change players a lot. A few different ways. You can go into your player settings. You can swipe left and delete. You can also go into your golf bag and delete your golf bags from there. You can create in the VX app. You can create different golf bags for all of your players. I like to stay with a standard bag that I'll just select my clubs from there. It just makes it easier for me. But yeah, to delete the players, you just go into your player list, swipe left, and you'll get the delete button. We have a question from Derek Baker. With Multicam, is there any way to have it set so that it runs continuously without processing each shot, and then you can look at videos as needed? When connected to the FS Video app, there is an option in the menus, in the video menu, to set it as continuous or single. If you set it as continuous, it's just going to cycle through the shots. Once you get done, you can go back and review those shots. Just remember, when you have multicam, the X3 does have to be on that 5 gigahertz dongle. If you have one of the newer X3s, you can just reach out to us and we can get you squared away with a 5 gigahertz dongle, and then that just makes the communication that faster with the video processing. But continuous in the settings will allow you to go continue hitting shots, and then at the end you can review that. So we'll continue along. Now, some things to consider when you're indoors. This is radar. Radar is sensitive. It can see things that are moving in the environment, and that is to include lighting. So fluorescent lighting, for example, low hanging fluorescent lighting does create a disturbance in the environment, and the radar can pick that up. We recommend, if you're going to do fluorescent lighting, that you go as high as you can, or you go on the LED route, which does not affect the radar. You don't want to have any fans in front of the radar, so whether it be a computer fan or be a fan from your home or just a regular fan that you put in the corner of your simulator room, you want to keep that environment as clean as possible. I tell you guys a story. In our studio here, when the X3 first came out, I was doing some testing with it, and I was really struggling. I just couldn't figure out what was happening. I was just getting like weird numbers, and the engineers asked me to take a raw data sample, an environmental sample, and I did. And come to find out, what actually happened was there's a wall at the end of our simulator bay, and behind that wall there's our battery station for some of our older product line, our legacy product line of the X2s that used to have D-cell batteries. And what was causing the disturbance is the radar could actually see through that wall, and it was picking up all the cells that were in the charging stations. So, there was so much noise in the radar's view that it just couldn't, it was obviously there was too much disturbance. So just be aware of the environment. If you guys are looking to purchase a unit, our support team can go in and do an environmental sample and just make sure that it's clear, and it's just something that's done through the unit itself. So whether you have a demo unit or you just got your brand new unit, we can do an environmental sample and check out, make sure everything is clean. So keep everything as clean as possible. No big fans or fluorescent lighting near the radar. And also metal objects, you just want to doesn't mean, your framing is going to be metal and stuff like that, we understand. Just don't want anything that is going to impact the radar signal. We have a question from David. So what is the best way to eliminate a bad shot from calculating in the averages? David, if you're using the FS VX app, there is a new delete button on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. So let's say you hit a shot, it's a bad shot you want out of the averages, you can just simply go delete, and that shot is gone out of your averages. However, if you do not want to remove the shot, if you just want to remove it from the averages, you can go, and I believe this is a function of only the PC software at the moment, but you can go in and just click delete, and it removes that line out of the averages. And if you hit shift delete, it will remove it completely. believe that's only a function of the FlyScope PC software. However, it is a great point, and I will ask the developers if this is something that could be added in future to our actual mobile applications. I have a question from Brian Jones again. When using a hitting bay hitting out onto the range, what causes a camera used to line up the ball to target to not work? Is it going to sleep as well? It is still capturing shots, but I cannot line it up. I have to again restart the unit to work again. Brian, the only thing that can happen with a camera when you're going in to out is that the brightness from the outside in can affect how you the image that you're seeing. It could look like it's foggy. It just has to refocus itself. But you shouldn't have any problems capturing the video. So if you're experiencing that, then I would recommend to speak to our support team. There could be an issue there, but that is not part of the functionality of the unit. So there could be an issue with your camera. Continue along with our slides. So the FS Golf app, for those of you who maybe haven't used it yet, I'd highly recommend to download this application onto your phone or your iPad and give it a shot. It has some really cool new features like our data margins, which allows you to set specific minimum and maximum values for a particular data parameter. And once you hit a shot, it will give you feedback whether you're green in that parameter or you're red or outside the tolerances. So let's say, for example, I were to set my 7-iron, I want to go between 165 and 175. If I'm within the margin, when I hit the shot, it'll come up green. If I'm outside the margin, it'll come up red. Really cool feature, especially for helping students not maybe just get stuck on looking at the actual numbers. They can just look down and say, hey, I'm green there. Maybe they're working on path or they're working on face. I'm green or I'm red, and they can just go right back to their next shot and make the adjustment and hit the next one. So really cool feature that gives that instant feedback. It does also now have our 3D views of the range, so you can get different perspectives. You have the down the line, the 45, or face on, so to speak, the top and bottom. Those views look really cool with the live trajectories. And then you have the combination of the video. So if you have you can use the video from your phone, and you can also connect through multicam. So cool feature of the FS Golf app. Give it a shot if you guys have it. On the FlyScope VX, we have the FlyScope Environmental Optimizer. The optimizer has been, I think, one of the most impactful additions that we've had in our software maybe ever. It's given us the ability to understand what happens to your golf ball in different weather environments without physically changing your location. This was a big project that we started close to 2.5 years ago. Henry and myself went out to Riviera to help Bryson in a practice round, and the question came up about normalized data and normalized data not necessarily filling the void for the data that was needed, because normalized data as we know it is just what we call standard sea level conditions, which is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 50% humidity, 0 feet of altitude. And we wanted to be able to change certain parameters and understand what would happen. And you can see a list of the parameters that you're able to change. So you can change altitude, you can change air temperature, you can change your relative landing height, which I believe it's a huge factor, humidity, wind speed, and wind direction. So I can hit a shot here in Orlando, and I can say, hey, I'm going to go play in Colorado next week at 5,000 feet above sea level. It's going to be 60 degrees. The humidity is going to be 10%, and I'm going to have a little quartering wind off the left. And the FSEO will show me not only the shot that I hit here, but it's going to show me a blue trace for the shot that I would hit in the environment that I've selected. And if you notice on this screen, it gives me 2 carry distances, the top one being where I'm located, the bottom one being where I would be. And it's going to do that for the parameters that would change in the different environments. So if you haven't checked out the FSEO, please do. It's a game changer. It's awesome. And if you have any questions on how to use it, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you out. We have a question from Axel. It says, when training with the X3 FSVX app, sometimes the data can be overwhelming. I would agree. It's a lot of data. Are you guys planning on putting the numbers into perspectives of perfect swing or PGA averages and show which numbers are well off green, yellow, or red? So Axel, we have gone down this path in the past. The problem is it's very hard to put these parameters into a box, because, and I know this is not what you want to hear, but everyone has a different golf swing. You know, their launches are different, their spins are different, their paths are different. So it would be very hard to put averages into parameters such as club path, face angle, because players swing the club differently. I mean, you could have a Bubba Watson, a Bryson DeChambeau, a Jim Furyk, a Matthew Wolff. These swings are totally different on the different end of the spectrum. So what we have done, though, is we've allowed you in the FS Golf app to have your data margin. So now you can go in there and select which data parameters you want to narrow down and look at, whether you're in the green or the red. So one thing that I think would be great is you could go into ShotLink, you could look at your yardage bands, and then you can just select you can select your carry distance for all your clubs, and once you go into your range session and hit shots, you'll know whether you're green or red. Our FS Skills app also does have those yardage bands in the summary screen, where you could see what those yardage bands are, and set your data margins based on that. So I know that's not what you want to hear, but it is very difficult to, and I'm thinking specifically to like club path, face angle, and angle of attack. It's very difficult to get an average of that, because you have the player that hits a draw, you have the player that hits a cut, you have the players that hit it high and low. So if we were to take an average, it'd probably just put you at pretty close to zero. So yeah, we'll keep down that road, keep brainstorming on how we can do something to give you averages for that. But it is a tough one. Question from Paul: does the FSEO work on older units? Paul, the FSEO is only available for the X3 on its full capability. There is some functionality in like Excite Tour, but the full EO, like you see on the screen, is only available on the FlightScope X3. Got a question from Jeffrey. I wasn't able to get on at the start. Is this being recorded for access later? Absolutely. You'll get a link with it where you can watch it and replay as many times as you like. Question from Brian Jones. Is there any plans to update the appearance of the PC software? Brian, it is currently in the works. The developers are actively working on it, and I actually spoke to them about it yesterday. We hope to have a version with a new look and feel by show of 2021. So I know we're not going to have a PGA show, or a physical one at least, but we should have something ready to go by then. We'll be beta testing it here in the next few weeks, and I think it's going to look really cool. It's going to have that look of the FS Golf and the FS Video app, so it's going to be really neat. Alrighty, let's move along our slides here. Just some additional screens on what the FSEO looks like, and again, the wind direction and wind speed I think is an amazing feature to allow people to understand how wind affects the golf ball, and it's a very interesting subject. if you have a 10-mile-an-hour wind hurting in, and let's say it hurts you 5 yards, if you were to turn 180 degrees and go directly downwind now, it doesn't mean it's going to help 5 yards. So I think this is a really nice tool to start helping players understand how the wind affects their golf ball in different directions and in different speeds. So a really, really awesome tool. Multicam, as we spoke of before, the Multicam gives you access and connections to your FS Video, FS Short Game app. It automatically records your videos. It syncs your videos from your views for your instant replay. So you'll see an example here. We have the down the line view from the iPad. We have the face on view or the quarter view from the iPhone or your Android device, and then you have your data parameters. And it's a neat feature of the FS Video and the FS Short Game app, which allows you to move your screens customized how you want them. So maybe you just want 2 views, maybe you want 3 views. You can customize that, and the Multicam will feed the video into your application. I talked a little bit earlier about some of the data parameters the X3 provides. The speed and the acceleration profiles are 2 huge parameters that should be used for, especially for fitting, but can also be used for teaching. I'll give you a little brief course on the speed and acceleration profiles. So what you'll see here, this graph, and you'll get this graph on VX, you'll get it on the PC software, you'll get it in your video apps, is a graph that shows speed over time, or distance. So on the left hand side you're going to see speed in miles per hour. On the bottom side you're going to see distance, negative and positive. The negative distance is prior to impact, 0 is impact, and the positive feet is post impact. So these profiles, what we're seeing is from 5 feet before impact, the club head is coming into the radar's field of view, and the club head is gaining speed towards impact. Once the ball is struck, we're going to filter out the noise in that first foot or so, and then because there's a lot of disturbance, and then you're going to see the club head exiting the radar's field of view. So on these 3 shots here, you can see that the player's speed got to the same point, but there was some variances within those 3 shots. Now, if we move over to the acceleration profile, it's going to have the same principle. The only difference is instead of speed on the left-hand side, we have acceleration and g-forces. And what does this mean? Well, general rule of thumb with these acceleration profiles is as follows. If you have a player who swings the driver over 100 miles an hour, you're going to want all of their profiles with all of their clubs, for the most part, to be what we call linear, which is this bottom screen here. So you can see that before impact, a foot or 2 before impact, the club head is very stable, very linear. If you have a player that has a club head speed of under 100 miles an hour, then you want their acceleration profile to maybe have a little bit of a fish hook at the end, which is going to help them with club head speed, launching the ball higher, keeping the spin down. So those are the 2 general profiles that you're going to be looking to put players into. What we always say, though, is you just want whatever their profile characteristic is, you just want it to be consistent and repeatable. So, I've seen it many times where, you could have a player that gets fit into a specific shaft and their profiles look great, but then they go and do a swing change, and now they come back and the profile maybe doesn't look as good because they've changed how they're, applying forces to the club and the shaft, and they've changed how that shaft is reacting to the forces they're applying to it. So these profiles are very, very important for fitting, and it's actually one of the main reasons why Bubba Watson started using our technology was because, believe it or not, because of the acceleration profiles. He got on Bryson's unit when they were at the Ryder Cup, and he was hitting his driver and saw the acceleration profiles, and he's like, wow, this driver shaft I've been using for 13 years is really still working for me. So it just gave him confirmation that, his equipment was really dialed in for him. So really good profiles. If you need some more information on them, feel free to reach out. We can send you some of these graphs, but general rule of thumb, that's what you're going to be looking for. The X3 has simulation. You have these are three of the main simulation packages, which is the E6 Connect, your Creative Golf 3D, and then TGC, the golf club. We also have Awesome Golf, which is another. It's a new one, which is really nice. It's definitely more on the entertainment side, but a really cool feature in simulation. They've been getting a lot of nice updates and a lot of good positive reviews. As you know, the X3 will come with your E6 True Golf current bundle, and then those bundles can be upgraded depending on what courses you like to play. We have a question from Wayne. Asks, how accurate is a short game feature plus or minus yards? Wayne, on the putting, I know the accuracy is less than yards. It's definitely within inches. So for putting, for example, let's say you were to set a 15-foot putt, with the fusion tracking, it's going to be within inches, if not less than a ball for sure, probably half of a ball. So the accuracy on it is extremely accurate, and this is something that we're always verifying. On the longer side of things, X3, because it is a full tracking radar, at 200 yards it's going to be plus or minus a yard. At 300 yards it's going to be plus or minus 2.5 yards. So very accurate. So here's just some general information on how you can reach our support team. You can reach us via telephone, email, online chat based. We are here 6 days a week for all of our FlightScope customers. These are our times, Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturdays from 8:30 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can reach us at support@flightscope.com, or you can reach us on that support phone number of 407-412-9400. If you need to reach our sales, you can reach us at sales@flightscope.com. That's probably the easiest, fastest way without picking up the phone and giving us a ring. And then you can reach both of our websites at flightscope.com or flightscopemevo.com. What is also important is make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We do provide a lot of updates on there. If you are a user already, you're more than welcome to join our user groups. We have some user groups on Facebook, which our customers can speak about just the applications, or if they have a question or they need some help with something. So feel free to reach us out on our social media pages. I have a few more questions here. We have a question from Ron, which says, does the metallic dot on the golf ball also work with simulators, or mainly just the apps? So yes, if you're using the radar indoors in simulation, you do have to have the metallic dot, and this is only for full swing and chipping shots. It is not for putting. If you're using the radar for putting indoors or in simulation, you will not have a dot on the golf ball. I have a question from Wayne. It says, I have an X2 at the moment and it seems to struggle at times under 50 yards. Wayne, just give our support team a call. They can look into, if there is something going on with the unit. The one thing I can tell you is the X2 does not have fusion tracking. So if you're hitting those shorter wedge shots, there will be multipath. And that is one of the key features of the X3, is that fusion tracking capability. Axel asks, does the X3 unit ever need to be recalibrated? As long as you don't drop it, all the X3 is going to need its firmware updates, which will be pushed automatically to you through your applications. But without any physical damage or drops to the unit, that there is never any need for a recalibration. Ken is asking, are there any YouTube videos that will take you through the step-by-steps on how to use our application? There is actually other webinars for the individual applications. You can also look at you can look at our website and see the videos there. You can also schedule an application training with one of our application specialists, where we'll take you, we'll jump on a call with you, whether that be on the phone or Skype or whatever you have, and we can actually walk you through step by step the applications that you want to use, and go through it with you. So I highly recommend, especially if you have a support agreement. That is part of the support agreement. You can just call one of our sales teams, and they can set up an appointment with an application specialist, and they'll take you through the applications. Question from Brian: are there any local sales reps that come to our facility? Brian, we do have sales reps throughout the country. You just have to let us know where you're located. It has been a little bit different now with COVID and the whole situation, so travel is a little different. But yes, we can definitely get somebody to you if you're open to that, and they can demonstrate the product for you. I see a question in the chat from Charles. I missed most of this. How do I get a replay, please? If you're subscribed, or if you're in this webinar or registered, you will get the link at the end of this webinar. Alrighty guys, so I hope I answered some of your questions and gave you some information on the X3. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have. Stay on the lookout for webinars in the future. We'll continue updating you and keeping you informed. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a great day.